Miss Chris, keep it incognito.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's a very charged word.
Yeah.
Right?
So in the mental health world, I suppose, it's instead of saying commit suicide, that's something they're trying to gear away from, because you also commit a crime. There's a very negative context to it. Mm-hmm. You don't want the remaining family members to feel like someone committed a negative act. So it's death by suicide, but you get away from that word committed is going to be better for the survivors of that situation, for sure. So, yeah.
Because, the survivors are the ones that are going to have to carry this forward with them. So when they say someone's committed suicide, the person that's deceased is now being, now looked at like they've committed something. So yes.
Yeah, and I still have a tough time. I mean, my best buddy that committed suicide lived right downstairs. You guys have seen the house. He didn't end his life here, but his belongings were still here, and that was a really tough thing to deal with. And for that last year, I don't drink, I don't do drugs anymore, any of that shit. So if I'm just on the air trying to make a difference and talk about sex and swear a little bit, if that's the worst I'm doing, then I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But that was a really tough thing to deal with. And moving forward, I can't understand how people kind of, I've never been to that low point. Have you guys ever thought about suicide at all? Has that ever crossed your mind?
Sure.
Yeah?
I have,
Yeah?
Yeah. A long time ago. I was young and emotional.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
in my, a state where nothing was going your way.
Sure.
Thing.
Yeah.
And
everything just felt like the world was collapsing in on you. Sure.
Yeah. And I thought about it. Couldn't actually do anything about it.
No.
But
and I think that's fairly common.
There was a time where I didn't want to live anymore. Didn't think that it mattered anymore.
And if you had ended your life at that point in time, what would you have missed out on? Would you, for a message for young people right now, say there's people watching, because I actually got a Facebook message last night saying that someone tried to end their life and that they thought that maybe they could reach out and talk to me. And I said, anytime. Mm-hmm. So anyone that's considering this, you never know. No. So
time. Give it time. The number one thing is just give it time. Do not make rash decisions.
Sure.
Don't make rash decisions. Suicide it's a big deal. You're ending your life. Think about everybody around you. Yeah. Who's going to miss you?
Sure. Yeah. And sometimes, in fairness, sometimes people do feel that there's no other way out when it comes to that. But I agree with you. I think give it time. I think that everything in life passes, and just like the weather, you're going to have to face some storms from time to time.
Definitely.
I wasn't planning on getting that into the suicide aspect of it. I hope we didn't depress it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is going to take a life of its own, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right. I guess what I was going to say too is that, we're relating the suicide aspect to the mental health part of things. But
absolutely.
You actually have experience in more than just the suicide aspect too. Anxiety, all that stuff. And you do some stuff for that too, don't you? Yeah, for about,
even when I was on the Bachelorette briefly, I was on Cipralex was the medication that it was. It was an anti-anxiety medication. I've been on and off medications for mental health, trying to calm my nerves for up until 2 years. I stopped taking that medication 2 years ago, and I do other things now naturally to try, and it works. Right. But for 10 years, I was struggling. I'd wake up in the morning, and my heart would just be racing for no reason, and it was really tough. It was tough to deal with.
Well, one of the things I think people don't realize, a big misconception for people who aren't on any kind of medication, is there's this kind of idea, I think, that you take a pill and that's it. Like, your doctor gives you something, you go in, I have anxiety, the doctor gives you a pill, and then you don't have anxiety anymore. Where in the real world, it really doesn't work like that. I mean, part of the sometimes the biggest struggle for people is not having the courage to ask for medication, but to figure out which kind of medication works for them. Right? Because there's people who go on one medication and it screws them up one way, right? And they take another medication, and it takes some people years to find the correct medication.
Yeah, and that's
for them personally.
Sure, and that's not, well, everybody's different, right? So when it comes to the psychiatrist, and it was the same way, like I saw a psychiatrist when I was younger for a long time, and I felt like I was this guinea pig, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And when he put me on and off different kind of medications, he'd just say, I'd say, well, I don't feel like it's working. And what he'd do is he'd increase the dosage and increase the dosage. It's like, well...
You become a zombie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I felt like I wanted something that was a quick fix. And that's the fucking problem with the way that this whole culture is that what is our attention span? Aren't we less than a goldfish now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so because of the way that we've kind of groomed ourselves, or not, or whoever's groomed us with technology, it's almost like we need instant gratification right away. And it's the same thing, go get a quick fix pill when you have depression or anxiety. But,
well,
go ahead.
I was going to say too, like, I think it's kind of interesting because, like, we live in a world where there's a technology for everything, a medication for everything, there's a lot of things we think we can just fix because we're smart.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe sometimes we forget that mental illness or just anxiety, depression, things like that. These aren't things that aren't normal. Like, it's normal to feel those
Absolutely.
emotions, those feelings.
Sure.
Those are normal human emotions.
Absolutely.
And I feel that a lot of times people don't understand that. And I think a lot of times people who are prescribing these medications don't view them as normal human emotions. They go, that's aberrant behavior.
Sure.
That's not normal. So we have to medicate.
Especially with kids now.
With kids, which was what I was going to say. Because, I remember...
Diagnoses are coming super fast.
Right. I remember my best friend. He was a really hyper kid, always talking really fast, loud. And so his mom slapped him on Ritalin.
Yeah.
When he was like 7. Right?
Sure.
And I watched the Joe Rogan podcast, and they had Henry Rollins on there. He had the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, both of them, my friend now, and obviously Henry Rollins, like, they're very successful people. They talk, very outgoing people, but it was something that slowed down later in their lives. And it's, I think in some cases it's just people have different personalities. They're composed, they're built differently.
Sure.
Right? Like, maybe you're not built to sit in front of a projector every day and listen to a teacher. That's just not how it is.
Less tolerance now.
Yeah.
Which is very unfortunate. The classrooms are getting bigger. They're not, teachers are getting less and less.
Yep.
They're putting less teachers in a classroom.
Yep.
And there's more and more kids. So if there's 1-2 kids that are causing distress and that teacher doesn't have time to focus on them anymore, yes, they're going to do something about it. They're going to tell you there's something wrong with your kid, take them to the doctor. Mm-hmm. I've experienced that with a lot of my friends. And it's not about there's something wrong with him. No, he's just a little boy that likes to jump up and down. His attention span might not be just like everybody else, but there's nothing wrong with him.
Right.
It's just he needs more attention and they can't provide it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify that we're not bashing medication in any way.
Not at all.
Yeah, because we're really glad that it's obviously there and there are some people that desperately need it.
We're just talking about our experiences.
Absolutely.
Right? Everybody has them.
Sure. I almost feel as though mild mental illness, which is kind of, it's almost, where do you draw the line between a mild mental illness now and a human emotion? It's like, we are supposed to feel things. Just because at one point I'm sad doesn't necessarily mean I need to be on...
I'm a depressed person.
Sure. Or it doesn't mean that, So, go ahead.
And I think, too, the world we live in now is so drastically different than the world that people lived in, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I almost feel like, as society changes and as we live in this more rigidly structured society, it's almost like, people are expected to change.
Right.
It's not the institutions, right? It's not like, okay, well, maybe this is just being too much for you, right? Maybe having 4 exams in a week that are 2 hours each and count for 30% of your grade.
Sure.
Maybe that's just a bad structure, right?
Yeah, I agree completely.
If you're anxious over something like that, right? Because there's students that have that problem, right? Like, they have so much anxiety and so much depression, and then they go, I have anxiety problems, something's wrong with me. And it's like, well, yeah, it's obviously a problem. You have an anxiety problem.
Yeah.
But is it your fault that you're feeling like that?
Sure.
More and more people, too, are starting to use it as an excuse, right?
Right.
That's their kind of gateway to get away from having to write an exam or get away from having to finish this assignment because they can.
You know what, though? You might be right in that, but at the same time, there's so many people out there, and this is I've talked to people at universities and colleges that are sort of involved in the mental health when I've done my tours. And what they've said is kids are almost afraid. I don't want to call them kids; they're young adults. But compared to me, it was 12 years ago for me now. So the thing is that they're afraid to talk to people because they're also nervous that it's going to go on their permanent record, or someone's going to see that it'll affect their future in a career.
Right.
So just so that you guys are aware, I was trained to be a pilot in my early 20s and I was also diagnosed. My psychiatrist also diagnosed me as bipolar and put me on lithium. So I was trying to fly a fully aerobatic airplane, 250 horsepower, while I'm taking a drug that I shouldn't have been on, and it made me feel weird.
Right.
And I'm up against one of the most stressful careers because I thought, hey, I have fucking anxiety issues. Why don't I try to be a pilot and beat this thing head on? Like, face your fear, right? Yeah. So, and obviously that didn't work out so well. The nice thing about going into real estate and ending up in sales was that I could cancel any appointment and rebook it without having to admit that, hey, I'm feeling depressed today. I'm feeling anxious today. And now that the more that you talk about it and the more open you are with it, for me, I don't feel that shit anymore. I mean, I might feel sort of shitty for a period or two. I mean, you guys knew when I was open and honest about it a few weeks ago. In January, I wanted to launch this podcast back in January. I wanted to launch these videos back. Start of the year 2017, let's go. Well, hey, I felt like shit for a while. That happens in life. And you know what? So what? Little behind, pick it up, move on. What I do find interesting, though, is how I asked you guys about sex, and I asked you about suicide. We spent double the amount of time
on suicide.
And about sex. That's which is interesting.
It is very interesting.
So the show. This is what I.
Sex?
Let's go back to sex. Let's ask Chris. Let's ask little Miss Chris.
Let's get to know me as a co-host first. Then we can talk about the sex life.
Okay, fair enough. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? How much time do we have here? Do we know? I don't even know when we started. Whatever, it doesn't matter. We'll keep going. Okay, so do you want to tell us? What do you think is paramount for the viewers to know about you as an individual when it comes to these topics that we're going to discuss in these separate shows?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
we're at 225 viewers, by the way.
I come from a
Thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate it.
Thanks
I haven't checked Facebook Live, but thank you for tuning in. Little Miss Chris is drawing in the crowd.
I come from a very traditional family.
Okay.
So I'm Lebanese, fully Lebanese.
Yeah.
And we were back and forth between Canada and Lebanon for a very long time. We would spend 5 years here, 6 years there, 5 years here, 6 years there. So I got a little bit of Western civilization, but at the same time I was growing up in tradition.
Sure.
So the two were very conflicting. When I got back, when I was 18 years old, I was introduced to this Western civilization, and talking about sex, I mean, I was a virgin. There was absolutely no
At what
talk.
age?
18.
18? You were a virgin at 18?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And does that surprise you?
No. I mean, no comment. Yeah, I'm not going to go there.
When I came here...
Don't worry, I was
Oh yeah, you got something.
I didn't lose my virginity at 18. No, I'm not saying. I'm saying I came to Canada at 18, still a virgin.
Right.
Not having experienced anything sexual, really.
Right.
Because where I was raised, or where I was being raised for the last 5 years before that, and we're talking about puberty stages, right?
Sure.
In life, you're growing, your body's changing, boys are changing, getting a little bit more physical, but... Back then, I mean, times have changed now. Beirut's changed a lot. There was no talk about sex. We didn't talk about sex. We didn't talk about... I never got the sex talk from my parents.
Right.
I didn't either. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So coming to Canada, and then my eyes were wide open.
Sure.
Right? And it was like... And then I remember having my first boyfriend, and I remember not even thinking about sex. And there was a conversation between me and him saying, you know, And at this point, I had waited. We weren't physically you know, having intercourse at all. But a couple weeks into it, you know, I hadn't told him I was a virgin. I kind of kept that to myself. And then we were talking